And now here's part 2 of our episode.
Dear listeners, while we were listening to that, it appeared that Adam became pure light. Would you like to tell us a little about, what does this song do for you, Adam? Why is it the standout track and the greatest song ever written, as you have said before we listened to it?
Even as I talk about it, I say this with no facade whatsoever. When I listen to that tune, I get tears in my eyes because James has talked about that is his love letter to music. He wrote that about going to see shows back in our hometown and watching the crowd roll in and millions of lights explode and feeling you here again. And it's hard for me to separate musically and emotionally what I feel about this track. Because musically, this is a really awesome, really well condensed, really well orchestrated, arranged, and put together country, quote unquote, track. Right? You got the steel guitars, you got the acoustic guitar, you got the on the hi-hats. You have this really put together well country track, but then you listen to the lyrics and you hear what it's about, and it's his love letter to music. And I can't listen to it because you have the first verse where it is about music. You always told me bars are dark and lonely. And then he moves into the second verse where he goes, feeling you here again. So it's a love letter to music, and then it turns into a love letter to a person. And I have, as a musician, as a songwriter, as an artist, never been able to separate the two.
Yeah.
I feel when I write, and I feel when I play. And I feel when I love, and I feel when I speak to people. Speaking to you both tonight, I have great love for both of you. I don't know how to not feel that. So to have those mix of feelings and to have him in some wild, wonderful way, especially when you think about he's out in deep Eastern Kentucky in some grain silo, screaming his heart out, talking about his feelings about music and then about love in the same song. I have never, as a songwriter or a musician or an artist, been able to compact my feelings into one piece like that. So I say to you, to the this one goes to 11 hosts and listeners, I'd say this is the greatest song ever written because it is about music. And it is about love. And I would argue that the two are not mutually exclusive.
1 million points. Best song ever because it's about music and love, and they're not mutually exclusive.
I mean, I think you're kind of getting at something that, sometimes when we ask people to be on the podcast, they say to us, "Oh, but I'm not really an expert on music," or I don't know a ton of stuff about the artist or about the album. And we always say, who cares? So
and
what?
Neither do we.
Because it's just, I think what you're getting at is that I think sometimes when you try to put into lots of words why music works or how it, what's good about it on an objective level, where you're trying to describe all the nuts and bolts or maybe pulling apart the music theory, that can get real tedious. But when you just tell a story about how it makes you feel or what you associate it with, alongside it, to me that's always what brings out the music. I mean, we've covered artists and albums on this podcast that I will admit, beforehand, I never would have listened to the album or the artist, and sometimes even going into the recording of those episodes, I'm always a little okay, well, we'll see how this one goes. But inevitably, when you talk to someone who has formed that connection with the music, it just changes everything. And in some ways it sounds to me like you're saying that this song sort of even goes beyond that, because he's found a way in as few words as possible and with I would argue relatively simple, or not simple but spare instrumentation. It's all very simply put together, but like sort of magically constructed that it just works.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you look at what this record becomes for the band. So they had done Tennessee Fire, and then they did At Dawn, which are all very sparse, acoustic, kind of wild stuff. And then they move into this record when Johnny Quaid and the other keyboardist, Dan,
they left, right?
Yeah, they left. But the addition of Patrick Hallahan, the drummer.
On drums, yeah.
Yeah, which, especially after last week's concert, I am going to go ahead and say I think Patrick Hallahan is the greatest rock drummer currently living.
Oh, interesting.
Wow. Okay.
I
might take exception to that with Glenn Koch. Glenn Koch being the person who I think might give him a run for his money.
I mean, I'm going to say you're both wrong, and it's actually Janet Weiss, formerly of Slater-Kinney, but that's okay.
Sure.
We can have this conversation some other time. Yeah,
we're putting this in the idea jar or the for later jar of best drummer of all time conversation.
Yeah, let's put
special episode. We'll have you on. Here's a question for you, Adam. What is my morning? Speaking of the other band members, is my morning jacket Jim James, or to what degree is the ownership of the creative direction of the band, in your mind, in your estimation, as somebody who's seen them 25 times, how much is it just a vehicle for Jim's ideas versus a soup of all of their sort of creative voices?
That's a great question. I would equate it much to Wilco's growth in the last. And I just got this really lucky chance to see them doing Yankee Hotel Foxtrot, Ghost is Born tour, and then My Morning Jacket opened for them, and I saw both of them at the same time. So I have this kind of growth. I would say that it's clearly, My Morning Jacket clearly is a Jim James vehicle. But having listened to Jim's solo records over the last couple of years, of which there are successes and of which there are less than successes.
Yeah.
Nothing has that kind of vibe that it has when you have Tommy Two-Tone on the bass, you got Carl Brommel on the guitar, you got Bo Coster on the keys, you got Patrick on the drums, and you got Jim on the other lead guitar and the vocals. I think that it is Jim's vehicle. Having met him and having talked with him and I want to share another fun experience of that Wilco My Morning Jacket show later. But hearing their music, they don't make the records they do unless they're all in the room together. And I'll say that again to Wilco's, and I'll quote Jeff Tweedy where he goes, Yankee Hotel Foxtrot would not sound the same if the five of us were not all sitting in a room making that music together. Yeah.
Has to be. It has to be that way. The alchemy of it and what's in the room. And
alchemy. I think that's a great word for it.
Rewind.
Yeah.
So you've met Jim James.
I have on a couple of occasions. Yeah.
Are we going to talk about that?
Yeah. What's he like?
So that show that I saw them at the Louisville Palace. This must be October of 2004, I think, maybe August, September, October, somewhere in that area. I was taking guitar lessons at a little place called Music-O-Round, way off on Hurstbourne Lane in J-Town in Louisville, Kentucky, like a suburb of a suburb. And I came out I had just seen them about 2 days before. And this is how local those guys were at the time. I came out of my guitar lesson and I was working on trying to be Jimi Hendrix kind of guitar line, whatever. And I came out, and there is the entirety of My Morning Jacket standing at the counter of Music-O-Round on Hurstbourne Lane in Louisville, Kentucky, trying to sell one of Patrick Hallahan's extra drum kits from the tour, going, we're done with the tour. We don't need this drum kit anymore. And I watched them get heckled by the owner or the person behind the counter saying, I'll sell it to you for $650. And they were like, this is probably worth at least $9,000, maybe $1,000. And they were like, yeah, I'll give it to you for about $650. And I looked at my dad and I went, I saw that you drove us to this concert 2 days ago.
Wow.
And that's my morning jacket. That's Jim James. That's Patrick Hallahan.
Yeah.
And my dad goes, go up and say something to him. And I went, no.
There's an insistent head shake with a blank expression, listeners.
No way. So I had to get my dad to go, and I still have it somewhere in my house in Louisville. He got some sort of like little mailer or leaflet or whatever at the front door, and he got them all to sign it for me as I stood back behind like the drum kits and the amps, just going like, and my dad's going, hey, my son is a huge fan of your band. He just saw you guys down at the Palace. And they all just couldn't have been nicer. They all turned to me and go, hey, how you doing? Nice to meet you. You want to come up? And I just went, no. Yeah. And so it was local. I mean, like I used to, in the underground, underage music scene that I grew up in, we knew all those people. We used to hang out with them. We like I used to kick it with Jim James's younger brother. You know, like it was a community, man. It was such a special place that I grew up in. And so when I listen to It Still Moves, I know for a fact, like 6 months before my dumb high school band played Crescent Hill Baptist Church, My Morning Jacket played there. And then their record took off, and then they're now playing stadiums and all that kind of stuff.
Wow. Hometown boys, 500,000 points for the hometown boys. The boys are back in town. That's what I'll say. 500,000 points for the boys are back in town. Okay, Adam, so we asked you to nominate 4 perfect albums when we didn't ask you. You insisted upon nominating 4 perfect albums.
Yeah, let's make it clear. You guys did not ask me. I hit you guys up.
You did. It's true. So you nominated 4 perfect albums, but in no part of the brief did we explain what perfect is. So what were the standards for perfection that you were grading this album and the other ones against?
I think there's part of me that wants to intellectualize music. As a
Us too. We have a podcast about it.
that wants to like put it in a box and be like, here's what you look for. Here's what it is.
Yeah.
And I think there is total merit in going for that. But I also think there is an emotional, I tried to push myself to the intellectual in prepping myself, saying like, here's what a perfect album is. Let me quantify it. And then when I pitched you guys It Still Moves, what it comes down to is like, this record is emotion for me. I say this to my students all the time. Music is emotion. At the end of the day, doesn't matter what language it is, doesn't matter what genre it is, doesn't matter what instrument it's on. Music is emotion. You and I could not speak a word of the same language, but if I play something that connects with you, you will feel it. And so when I look at It Still Moves or a quote unquote perfect record, what I feel towards it is a gross emotional drive.
Sure.
And yes, that is my personal connection to it. That is me buying it 2003 and then seeing them so many times live, yada, yada. But I think what this record is emotional freedom.
And
I think
freedom.
Like, what do you want in a record? Because this record's got it. Do you want to have a quiet, retrospective, introspective feel? Here's Golden. Here's Steam Engine. Do you want to have some of the greatest rock tunes ever made, which I would argue One Big Holiday, which we have not discussed at a single point in this whole podcast. One Big Holiday is arguably the top 5 greatest rock songs ever written.
You are putting it up there, brother.
Oh, I'm putting it up there. One Big Holiday, Run Through, Megiddo, like these incredible rock songs.
Yeah.
One of the or then you have Master Plan, you have Dance Floors, you have Rollin' Back. What do you want from a record? Because I think this record will give that to you.
Earlier I mentioned that like there's, I think if I thought someone was going to be talking about My Morning Jacket and they were going to nominate an album, the album that I would have thought that would have come up would be Z, frankly. Because I mean, that was the album, that was my introduction to them. And that, I think, again, we're talking about rock critics who, you know, like to find the novelties, or they, you know, a way of describing something that's totally new and that sets an album apart. And yet a lot of the reviews said it's like the intersection of Radiohead and Wilco coming together like on Z. Because I think they got.
Do you guys like Radiohead or something?
I've heard of them.
They're all right.
Yeah.
But but like, I mean, it's now that I'm hearing you make your case for this, I mean, it makes total sense. Because the way you're describing it, like this is, of those two albums, this one is more about the emotion, where it feels like Z is like they're starting to experiment a little bit. They haven't lost that emotion or that core that they have, but the thing that makes it stand out is the production, and maybe a little bit of the writing. Whereas in this does feel like it's pouring out of their hearts in some ways.
And it, like, keep in mind that there's this idea that they were in a silo in Eastern Kentucky playing this, right?
Yeah.
And I will say to Z, which I think is absolutely, I'll use my one F-bomb now, it's a fucking fantastic record.
Yeah.
Like, it's so good. But you don't get Z, you don't get Evil Urges, you don't get Securital, you don't get any of these other things without this record, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you look back at Tennessee Fire and At Dawn, which are also absolutely wonderful, beautiful music, they were on a trajectory. Something happened within the recording of It Still Moves. The drummer left, Patrick Hallahan became a part of the band. Then Johnny Quaid and Danny What's-His-Face, the keyboardist, left. And then we have Bo Coster and Carl Bromwell join us. We don't have Z without this record, you know?
I get that. And I think that's a strong point in its favor, is that it represents a pivotal moment in the band's trajectory.
The same way I'd also argue that Yankee Hotel Foxtrot, which was another one of my pitches to you guys about a great record, simply because they were like, It Still Moves, Yankee Hotel Foxtrot, the same mind-boggling world for me at the same time.
Yeah.
We don't get Yankee Hotel Foxtrot without Yankee Hotel Foxtrot, we don't get A Ghost Is Born. We don't get Schmoka. We don't get, Cruel Country. The Whole Love, Cousin that they just released. Like, we don't get those things without this transformative record. And I think what I beyond my emotional connection to this record, I think about the trajectory of the band, and I think this record is a touchstone. And if they don't have this, they don't have any of that other stuff.
600,000 points for the turning point factor.
A quick little Jeff Tweedy thing. I don't know if either of you listens to Seth Meyers' podcast that he has with his brother about family trips.
I don't.
But the Jeff Tweedy he provides the theme song to the podcast, and then at the end of each episode, he rewrites the lyrics to a Wilco song to sort of summarize the episode that they've just had. Yeah, you gotta.
How did I not know about this?
No, I gotta listen to it now.
The Nick Offerman episode is quite good. I highly recommend that you do that.
Okay. Can I just say, as a longtime fan of the podcast, I don't want to create adversity within your guests. But do you have on hand how many points Gil Tanner made?
I don't, but it's here in my diary. It's here in my attaché case.
It's not a big thing. It's not a big thing. But I just want to make more points than Gil did.
Yeah, because you're a good American capitalist like the rest of us, right? Yeah.
It's not a competition. It just is. Can I sleep at night if I got more points?
I'll tell you what.
Than Gil?
So that the sanctity of the pedagogy of this podcast can persist. I can't tell you, but I will tell you that I'll do this. In the week that we release your episode, I will release on social media the point total between you and Gil, and we will see who scored more points. Okay?
All right. I'll take it.
All right, dear listeners, make sure you check out our Instagram.
Yeah, follow us on
Instagram. And I will say that the Gospel at Colonists, his episode and your conversation with him is truly wonderful, and like it turned me on to a record. Well, this is one of the things, and all jokes aside, one of the things I love so much about your podcast is that it has turned me on to as a musician, as a teacher, I talk about this. When I signed on to do an episode with you guys, I have conversations with my teachers at School of Rock that I teach at here in Chicago. Mm-hmm. This has become a conversation. What is your perfect record? Let's discuss it. Let's have this conversation. It's such a wonderful, beautiful thing. And Gil's episode and his pitch for Gospel at Colonists is fantastic. And that record is transcendent.
He's a good guy like that, Gil.
No, he's a great guy. I just want to beat him.
Hey, a little bit of competition keeps things interesting. Within reason. But so let's find out. Let's hear the points that you garnered. Most recent points I gave you were 600,000 points for the turning point effect of this album and how it defined the work that followed it as a testament to its perfection. Very strong point. I also wrote down that you wrote a perfect album has gross emotional drive, GED. 500,000 points for The Boys Are Back in Town. My Morning Jacket being good Louisville boys and staying true to their roots. 1 million points for you saying that Golden is the best song ever written because it's about music and love, and those two things are not mutually exclusive. You also won the second ever, this one goes to 11, Steadfast Concert Goer Award, which we really need to start keeping track of these things, Michael. I think we need to establish this as a standard question that we ask on each episode.
I don't receive a plaque from you guys?
Well, I mean, we'll have to adjust our budget a little bit. Would you accept a hand drawn certificate of completion,
like a nice PDF Adobe Arts
with a watermark on it?
Yeah, that I will make using Microsoft Paint,
and then some really gnarly approximation of both of your signatures.
It'll be gnarly.
And an image, some sort of like stock image that we haven't paid for, so it still has a watermark within that as well. Like, we can make this happen for you.
It's a classy podcast.
It'll just be like Mike and Tyler, like with the Y spelled backwards.
Yeah.
And then like Clippy from the old Microsoft.
Oh, I hope Clippy's doing okay.
I'm so...
Okay. He almost certainly isn't. I shudder to think of where Clippy is, by the way.
No, he's being, Sam Altman at OpenAI has him it's in a basement or something, like chained up to a wall.
We all saw Avengers, Secret Wars, or whatever. What is it? Infinity Wars. That's the one.
I saw it. Did you see it, Michael? Doesn't seem like your vibe.
I am not part of the MCU.
I'm just saying, Clippy was Jarvis when AI showed
Paul
up.
Bettany. If Clippy had Paul Bettany's voice, I would want Clippy everywhere with me. Paul Bettany is
okay.
Chef's kiss.
You guys. I'm sorry, we're really getting off task because
we are.
You're telling me how much more points I won.
That's right. Well, that's funny you should say that because you also, I was going to give you 20,000 points, but then you requested an amendment to that amount, and I gave you 50,000 points for the MMJ boys providing you with the singular greatest rock show experience of your life.
Yeah.
Good on them. 900 points for your dad saying that there was too much reverb and his mind is made up about this album. 600 points for the shout out to Ear Ecstasy in Louisville, Kentucky. You said it's defunct now, right?
Oh, man. Let me put this out there. Support your local record stores. I think Ear Ecstasy died because it was about 6 to 12 months behind the vinyl craze. And it was the greatest. So the shirt I'm wearing, I got from My Morning Jacket playing The Evil Urges cover to cover the day it came out at Ear Ecstasy, and it was like maybe 200 people in this tiny ass record store. Couldn't have been it was the great, Jim James sweated on me. I was in the front row, and it was just transcendent.
I'll give you an extra 6,000 points for bodily fluids.
Yeah.
What was next? Oh, you gave me 3 grizzly bears because I said that I wasn't the kind of person who could pick up an instrument and figure it out. So 3 extra grizzly bears for Tyler not believing in himself. Thanks, buddy. 50,000 points for saying that and am I remembering correctly that it is the Walden Theater that you worked at in Louisville?
Yeah.
I worked in admissions at the theater school, so we saw a lot of
many of us old Walden kids. Yeah.
Beautiful. Shouts to the Walden Theater. But 50,000 points for you saying you spoke in music and theater there. 9,000 points for The Art of Pizza, just plain and simple. 3,000 points for The Dan, and your dad sharing that with you from an early formative age. Very important, big pro Steely Dan podcast we are. And add all that to the 26 and a half stuffed grizzly bears that you gave to Michael for his 60-second intro to this band and this album. And I would say that the board's in a pretty good spot. But you know how it goes, Adam. It's down to Michael. I've recorded the points that you earned, but it's up to you, buddy. Michael, is It Still Moves by My Morning Jacket a perfect album? Does it go to 11?
I mean, I don't know how I can say no to a case like this. This is totally and completely joins the pantheon, Adam. You have succeeded. That we'll now add this album cover to our fictional room where we have with all the covers on it. This is a great conversation. Thank you for sharing it with us, Adam.
Woo! I can't thank you both enough for having me on, and thank you both for having this really wonderful podcast where you have honestly conversations I've had time and time again with musicians myself. This is awesome.
Thanks, man. We really appreciate it. We're really glad that you were so eager to come on. It's a very high compliment. Michael, we have to share what we chose as our standout track.
I cannot wait to hear.
What did we choose, Michael?
Well, we debated about it a little bit because on my first few listens of the album, Masterplan was the song that spoke to me the most. But then as I was listening to it more, I was like, is it the standout track or is it just the track that I'm drawn to most? And then as I thought about that more, I'm like, no, I think it is just my track, and I think the standout track is actually Run Through. If only because when I was reading up on it sounds like the way their live shows sort of transcend what their albums are, but I feel like listening to Run Through is the closest we get to the album capturing something. You can tell that song, as the kids say, that song slaps live. It just has to be. I mean, that's the song where they drew some of the Black Sabbath comparisons for some reason. Is that accurate?
I couldn't agree with you more.
Hey, we're glad you approve. It's definitely the standout for me too. So, Adam, it's truly been a pleasure. You're officially a friend of the pod, and we can't wait to see you in person one of these days. Maybe at This One Goes to 11 Fest sometime.
Please, oh my God, please.
So, everybody, we're going to leave you with Run Through, and hope you have a great week. We'll see you very soon.
Bye.